Marhaba, and welcome to the Matrix Green Pill, where real people connect.
Hello and welcome back to the Matrix Green Pill podcast. My name is Namita and today I'm joined by a very special guest. Mike Arnold is an artist and architect based in Dubai. In 2012, he completed his career in architecture to pursue a lifelong passion for painting. Mike paints scenes inspired through a deep connection to the region's richness, its history, its people, and its dramatic nature. Let's hear all about his creative journey in today's episode. Mike, welcome and thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, first, Namita, it's such a pleasure to be here with you today. My background is kind of a long adventure and interesting journey. I came to the region 18 years ago in 2004 and opened our architectural and project management office in the Middle East, focused specifically to design healthcare facilities. And I opened our office in Doha, Qatar, and in Dubai, UAE in 2004. And for the next 9 years, I spent my artistic energies focused on the planning design of major healthcare systems throughout the region. And in 2012, after we had sold our company to a much larger company, I found myself, after finishing my contract with the acquiring company, that I had to take 2 years off from practicing architecture. And it gave me this wonderful moment, an opportunity to think through what is it that I wanted to do for the next 2 years. I had such a deep passion through my early years of life, from the ages of 5 to 14, where at one time I wanted to become an artist, a painter, but was talked out of that at the age of 14 at a family gathering where an uncle asked me, what did I want to be when I grew up? I told him a painter, an artist, and he informed me that, the artists, painters don't make any money. And I was very impressionable at a 14-year-old and decided to pose the question back to him, which was, well, if artists, painters don't make any money as a profession, who in the creative field does? And he said architects. And that literally a year and a half later, I got my first and only job that I kept for the next 44 years, different positions within that job, within that company, that led to 2012 and 2013, embarking on the new journey and adventure as an artist painter versus an artist architect.
So my question later in the show was going to be that it's a common notion people who are in the art industry don't have a stable income, and it's always considered to be okay to have it as a hobby but not a full-time career. So what do you have to say about this?
I think that it's like any profession. If you have the heart, the energy, the dedication, and the drive, and truly the passion, that you can make, I think, any career successful. Certainly, and you can think about it in the architectural field, any design field. You can think about it in finance, fashion design, in landscape design. Anything is a challenge when you start. But if you have the passion and truly dedicate all of your energies and you keep that positive outlook, I think that as any profession that you may pursue, way beyond the list that I just rattled off, that you can be successful. Well, when I finished my architectural career 10 years ago, said, now you're retired. I said, no. I'm about to embark in a new career as an artist painter. And I'm intending, and great intentions, of making that career equally as good, if not better, than my architectural career. And I had a wonderful architectural career. I loved every day that I was an architect. And since over the last 9 years, I've loved every day as a painter. So I believe you can be successful. It's being smart, it's being aggressive, it's being creative, and also it's very important to develop the proper relationships with people that help broaden your capability and your arena where you can display and have people exposed to your art. The people that say you can't make money, you can't make a living as an artist, I disagree with them wholeheartedly.
You mentioned that you were attracted towards art at a rather very young age. So what was it that made you realize that you have this deep inclination towards art and becoming an artist?
It's interesting thinking back with that question. I just remember at a very early age, maybe 4 years old, 5 years old, that my mother, who loved art but was not an artist per se, she put a paintbrush into my hand. She gave me all kinds of what we call poster paint, or we call it now acrylic paint. She gave me some paper plates, and I began to chuck paint at the plates and trying to be creative, mixing way too much. But I just remember that there was something that I found very intriguing and captivating when I was putting that paint onto that paper plate. And the good news is that my parents recognized that I enjoyed the paintbrush in my hand or molding a piece of clay. And they decided to enroll me in the Philadelphia Museum of Art on the weekend art program. And I grew up from the age of 5 to 14, spending most of the weekends, except for the summers. We went to summer art camp, but most of the weekends during the school year, I spent at the Philadelphia Museum of Art, taking art classes, all types of art classes, and basically playing and living in the art museum amongst the masterpieces that are on the collection there.
Can you give us some tips or advice, not just for budding artists, but also for parents who kind of see that inclination in their children? Maybe, how they can, what's the right way to motivate them to become an artist?
It's so much a motivation, but giving the young children the opportunity to explore what it is that they enjoy doing. And I had a professional colleague that I came across, maybe 30, 40 years ago by the name of Michael Vance. He was the director of creation for Walt Disney when they were conceiving Disney World in South Florida or in Florida after they had created Disneyland out in the West Coast. And he basically said it's important for young people in the home to develop what he called the kitchen of the mind. And we said, what do you mean the kitchen of the mind? He says, you have to provide a spot in your home where you have a microscope, you may have a telescope, you may have some paintbrushes and some paints, some canvases, you have lumps of clay, you have marbles, you have different construction blocks, you may have lots of different things, but it allows for a young person to go and get lost in amongst all those different elements and see what it is that really is a driving force, what they enjoy doing. And so taking that and getting back to your question will help motivate a young person. It's first to see whether or not they enjoy that creative process. And I'm going to just throw something back at you, Namita. And that is everyone at an early age loves to pick up a paintbrush, loves to dip that paintbrush in several different colors and then begin to smear it on a piece of paper, on the wall, on the sofa, whatever it may be. And somewhere along the line, we kind of move away from that to move on to other areas. What I tell parents that have children that love to paint or love to create is make sure you provide an opportunity for that youngster to pick up a paintbrush and put one stroke of paint or pick up a pencil and put one mark on a piece of paper every day. And if you make it convenient, if you have it there at the kitchen table, if you have it there at a place where the child enjoys hanging out, you'd be interested to find out how that person or that child begins to evolve and enjoys the process of creating. And then obviously finding wonderful art instructors, the teachers that can help motivate and encourage young people to create in many different forms. Trying not to, what we say, don't let them stay within the line, but allow them to explore and work outside of the line or outside of the box. My tip to whether it's a parent bringing a youngster into my studio or a person who is finishing up one career and starting a new career like myself, they say, what's the secret behind evolving your art skill and your art hand? I say, pick up a paintbrush and put a mark, put a piece of paint on a canvas, on a piece of paper a day, even if it's just one mark. But as we all know, when you put that one mark on, you're always looking for the second and the third and the fourth.
I have a 7-year-old and I can relate to this. I mean, he loves to paint and, to just be very creative if I give him a paper. And so I'm definitely going to try this. And I love the term kitchen in the mind. That's right.
Yes, the kitchen of the mind.
Okay, moving on, Mike. Can you tell us about your solo exhibition called Odyssey, which launched last March? What is it all about?
Yes, Namita, I had my 5th solo exhibition at Mysteria Gallery in Al Circle Avenue in the Al Quoz area of Dubai. And I met with the owner of Mysteria Gallery, a gentleman by the name of Peter Goodwin. Met with him back in December. In the discussion, we mentioned he was offering me the opportunity to have a solo exhibition in March, which I felt was absolutely the best time of the year to have an exhibition here in the region because of Art Dubai and all the other great art activities activities that are happening here in Al Fahidi with the Sikka Art Festival and elsewhere around the country. I'd like to just have you give some thought as to what the theme of that exhibition would be. So we are in the process, and this is back in December of 2021, of celebrating the 50th anniversary of the independence of the UAE and really the coming together of the respective emirates. He said, can you think about creating large pieces of artwork that represent the journey that Emiratis have taken over the last 100 years and find a way to weave into that the journey and adventure that each of us in the expat community have weaved, and find out a way of telling story. And through telling that story, he said, one thing that you're known for, your black and white gold leaf monoprints, people aren't familiar with your portraiture. And he said, have you think about how do we tie the big black and white work that you do in with the portraiture that you do? So what I did is I thought after meeting with Peter, how to somehow pull that together. And the idea that I had was you have the Emiratis and their journey, the Bedouins across the desert. You have the traders, the fishermen, the pearl traders, pearl divers on the sea. And then you have kind of the interaction between those two groups at the coastline, at the souks. I said, if I could find a way to create these black and white, not as monoprints, but as black and white paintings that I did with a palette knife, and then interject alongside of these large black and white works, colored portraiture of the people that I envisioned were in those different scenes, whether it would be a caravan going across the desert, whether it would be fishermen or pearl divers out on their dhows, and what happens at the interaction of the respective souks. The next 2 months, I worked nonstop to create the black and whites first, and then to create approximately 25 to 30 portraits that were interjected in the actual exhibition at Mysteria Gallery. It was fun. It was a lot of fun. It talked about not only the represented in the paintings, not only the history that I envisioned as someone who's lived here and has grown up in both a previous profession and my new profession. It was my envision of how that all came together. Then it talked about the past. It also talked about the future, who represented the future, the leaders of this country. It's very interesting, the women leaders of this country, how they are changing their impact upon Expo 2020, their impact upon the Dubai Culture and Arts Authority, their impact in so many areas in the ministries of the different governmental entities within the UAE. So it was a fun undertaking. The exhibition ran for the entire month of March. It's not running now, though there are a couple of pieces that Mysteria Gallery still has displayed. And I'm just really thankful to Peter and the rest of the Mysteria staff for giving me this opportunity.
So, Mike, if I have to ask you, what is your favorite artwork you have created till date? What would it be and why?
It's a question, Namita, that is often asked of artists. What's your favorite? I like to say my favorite piece of artwork is the last piece of artwork that I worked on, because I'm finding, especially in this new career, and I'm 9 months into this new career, I don't call myself a young artist. I consider myself a young at heart artist. And I'm learning new techniques and new ways of thinking and interacting. I do want to add one thing before I try to answer your question, because I really don't have an answer. But you may say, well, what was the last piece of artwork you worked on? Which was a large black and white and gold leaf painting that I did of a series of elephants. It's titled Leader. And that is one that I finished, put the gold leaf on yesterday. But I do want to get back to one thing. And this gets back to many of the questions that you asked previously, which is I am part of the Tashkil art community. Our main studios and offices and galleries are located out in Nada Sheba. I happen to be a member of Tashkil and have my artist studio along with 4 other amazing artists down here in the Al Fahidi historical neighborhood. It's so important to be able to be amongst other artists that give you the opportunity to expand, to see what other artists are doing in different medium, and really to help evolve your own style. Getting back to the question, what's my favorite piece of art? My favorite piece of art is the one that I finished yesterday. And I now have another large canvas on the easel that I'm looking forward to getting to tomorrow. And it incorporates so much of the interaction that I have with not only my artists here at Al Fahidi, but my artist colleagues in Nada Sheba, and my artists and people that I meet in the sikkas and the alleyways at Al Fahidi and out at Al Sirkal and out in Sharjah, and anywhere where artists collect and have the opportunity of exchanging ideas.
Brilliant. And how long does it typically take you to finish one art piece? Let's say the last art piece that you're talking about. How long does it take?
Well, yeah, because I started my art career, my painting career, so late in my aged life, I was trained by an extraordinary mentor by the name of Trevor Wall, a world-class watercolorist and oil painter from London. And when I started studying with Trevor back in 2013, I'm going to train you initially in a style called alla prima, which means initial mark. And he said, I'm going to train you and help guide you, direct you in a way of starting a painting and finishing a painting in a day. It was an extraordinary learning experience studying with him for 6 months. So to answer your question, how long does a piece of artwork take to create? It takes anywhere between 20 minutes and 4.5 years. But I try to finish all of my paintings, reasonable size, within a day. Sometimes they get pushed to a second day. My very, very large paintings probably take somewhere between 3 to 5 days to complete.
4.5 years. Oh my God, that's like a very long time.
That one piece, I started on it, painted it for 3 days, had a summer break. Then I said, when I get back, I'm going to finish this painting. It was actually of the Hagia Sophia in Istanbul. Did get around to finishing that painting for 4.5 years later, putting some very distinctive marks and rays of light coming through the windows of Hagia Sophia to create the atmosphere. So that is the only one that took me 4.5 years, but I still look at it as never going to work on one that goes beyond that.
Mike, so the COVID situation changed a lot for many of us. How did it change things for you personally and professionally?
There were many changes. I remember back at the end of February, beginning of March of 2020, we were all preparing for the Sitka Art Festival here in Alfie historical neighborhood. I was flying back to the United States for a family function, and I ended up getting stuck back in the United States for 9.5 months. I left my studio with the intent of arriving back in a week and left everything, all my brushes, my canvases, paints, and everything just kind of out with the intent that I would be returning for the festival. And for the next 9.5 months, I did not pick up a paintbrush. And I did not pick up a paintbrush because I was with several other family members, extended family members, that were busy working extremely hard to try and save their businesses as the entire world was beginning to shut down. And so I decided that I'm going to put my art track, my art journey on a temporary hold and help with taking care of the grandchildren while their parents and other family members were busy trying to save their respective companies. So it had that initial impact. And I had started a new series right before the pandemic had hit. When I came back to Dubai and opened up my studio, and after seeing that I had about a half an inch of dust and sand over everything, it gave me the opportunity to kind of have a reset, to take a look at the things that I had done in the previous 7 years and make a determination about where I wanted to move my own creative energies. And so it gave me a chance to kind of reset, take a look at the work. It wasn't a purposeful separation, a step back, which many artists often do. They take a look after they've gone a certain way to either go on a sabbatical or begin to do reference collecting. But I had this forced situation that I think helped me evaluate where I wanted to take my new artwork in creating new narrative pieces of art, how I wanted to deal with the influence of color and energy upon my portraitures or my horses or my landscapes or my architectural work. I think it was fortuitous from that standpoint that led on to the development and the evolution of this new exhibition that I had last month.
How things changed for all of us during COVID and post-COVID. So, Mike, we have now come to the segment of our show where we'll ask you a couple of rapid-fire questions. Of course, you have to answer whatever the first thought that comes to your mind to ask you the question. Are you ready for it?
I am ready.
So let's go. What is your go-to comfort food?
It's ice cream.
Weekends in or weekends out? What do you prefer?
Always weekends out.
Okay. Favorite holiday destination?
Favorite holiday destination? Wow, that is a really... I'm going to say that my favorite holiday destination is somewhere out amongst the sand dunes in the desert, especially out Liwa.
Amazing. Okay. Favorite book?
Is a book called No Stranger to Tears, written by birth father by the name of William Cahan.
What is the book about? It just sounds interesting.
It's another long story, but the book is about his life, people that he interacted with, from some of the great notable people both in the United States and the world, and his children, and just his life.
Okay, so before we wrap up, Mike, we would like to ask you about your green pill moment. Could you share an inspiring or a life-changing experience that you've gone through?
One of the most amazing moments in my life was when I was making the decision after I finished my architectural career, knowing that I had this passion that was inside of me my entire life to paint and create and sketch. And I knew that if I was going to pursue this passion, I was going to need to have a studio. It was not something that I could do inside my own home in a spare bedroom or an office or a den. And I came down with the time I was living in one of the new towers that was created here in the UAE. And I knew that I wanted to have my studio in the oldest section of Dubai. And I knew that area that I had visited many times in the past. It was called at that time Bastakia, but now called Al Fahidi Historical Neighborhood. And I came down and I was just wandering around the alleyways, and I happened into Villa number 28. That was an art school called Mawahib from Beautiful People. That was an art school developed and founded by a wonderful woman by the name of Wemi Demacher. And I went in there and I introduced myself, and I met Wemi, and she introduced me to the students. And then she introduced me to the volunteers that were teaching these extraordinary students. As I was leaving, she said, "I'm sorry, Michael, but we do not have any free space that you can use as a studio. You may go look, I understand Tashkil," she was the one who directed me to Tashkil, "may have one. But before you go, you met all the students, extraordinary students of determination." And I said, "Yes." And she said, "Did you realize that more than half of them were male and about equal amount were female?" I said, "No, I didn't pop out at me." She says, "Well, you met all the volunteers." I said, "Yeah." And she said, "Well, did you recognize that they were all female?" And I said, "Now that you mention it, yeah." And I said, "I think you may have just found your first male volunteer." And I tell that story to say that one of the most inspiring moments of my life in my entire career was when I walked into Mawahib and I met the students that have literally changed my mind, that we on joint effort went through this journey to learn which end of the paintbrush to hold and how to chuck paint and how to laugh and how to dance while we're painting. It was truly, to this day, my interaction with those students that are now dear friends. They have not only taught me about life, they've taught me about art, they taught me about perseverance, they taught me about energy, they taught me about hope and positivity. That was my green pill moment.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you for sharing your fantastic and interesting story with us today. I'm sure our audience will thoroughly enjoy this conversation as much as I have. But before we say goodbye, could you please tell our listeners where they can find and follow you?
For 7 months, the winter months out of the year, I am located in Tashkil, Villa number 10 in Al Fahidi Historical Neighborhood. It's right by the old wall display or the covered area that is located near XVA Hotel and Gallery. You can see my artwork on my webpage at mikearnold.art, or you can follow and see my most recent artwork on Instagram at Mike Arnold Art.
Brilliant. We're going to put this in the show notes as well. Thank you, Mike, for joining us today. We wish you all the very best for your future.
Well, Namita, thank you very much for this opportunity to speak with you, and look forward to talking more in the future.
If you enjoy our conversations, please like and subscribe. See you next Wednesday.